The year is 1348. In a small English village, a boy named Aidan crouches near the base of a hazel tree, chewing the end of a branch until it splinters into bristles. It's not a game. It's part of his morning ritual. He's cleaning his teeth just like his father taught him. There's no bathroom, no mirror, no tube of minty paste. Just a stick, a handful of herbs, and generations of wisdom passed down through the ages. And while modern people might laugh at the idea of brushing your teeth with a stick, the truth is, Aidan and his neighbors may have had better oral hygiene than we give them credit for. We've all heard the stereotype. Medieval teeth were rotten, blackened stumps barely hanging on. But that popular image isn't entirely accurate. When you strip away the myths and actually look at the evidence, a different picture emerges. One of creative, nature-based dental care that, in some cases, was surprisingly effective. Long before mass-produced toothbrushes and fluoride toothpaste, people turned to what was around them: twigs, herbs, ashes, and a deep understanding of the natural world. And it worked better than you might think. Let's start with the medieval toothbrush, the twig. People didn't just grab any old stick. They carefully chose branches from trees with known health benefits. Willow, hazel, elder, and even neem were among the most commonly. In fact, the miswak, a twig from the Salvador persica tree used across the Middle East and Africa for millennia, has been scientifically shown to rival modern toothbrushes in effectiveness. It contains natural fluoride, silica, and antibacterial compounds that clean teeth and help protect enamel. Medieval dental texts, some dating back to the 10th century, didn't just mention twigs casually. They specifically recommended certain woods for their medicinal and cleaning properties, showing a level of intention and knowledge that challenges our assumptions. In many communities, knowing which trees to use for tooth cleaning was as essential as knowing how to plant a field or bake bread. Children were taught from a young age which sticks to chew and how to use them properly. It wasn't random. It was a system. And while the twig did most of the heavy lifting, people didn't stop there. They also chewed aromatic herbs like mint, sage, and thyme, not just for fresh breath, but because these herbs actually fight the bacteria responsible for bad breath and gum disease. Many of these herbs contain natural antiseptic compounds that made them ideal for mouth care. The act of chewing itself helped stimulate the gums, increasing blood flow and keeping the tissues healthy. Modern dentists still recommend this type of stimulation, even though most of us now rely on electric toothbrushes that do the work for us. When it came to cleaning between the teeth, medieval people didn't just give up. They got creative. They used fine horsehair, pig bristles, even split bird feathers to reach the tight spaces. Some regions used thin plant fibers like flax or hemp for flossing. It wasn't always comfortable, but it was functional. Their entire dental toolkit was biodegradable, zero waste, and sourced from within walking distance of home. Meanwhile, we're throwing away billions of plastic toothbrushes each year that will still be around when someone in the year 3025 is brushing their teeth with a stick again, out of necessity. But cleaning was just one part of the routine. Polishing and protecting the teeth came next. Without access to toothpaste, medieval people made their own mixtures. And while some of these sound bizarre to modern ears, the ingredients often made sense. Salt, for example, was one of the most common. Mixed with water, it formed an abrasive paste that scrubbed away grime and food particles. Its gritty texture helped remove plaque, and its natural antibacterial properties made it effective at killing germs. Folk healers even recommended it specifically for dental care. Charcoal was another popular choice. Made by burning wood to ash, powdered charcoal acted as both an abrasive and a detoxifier. It absorbed stains and toxins from the mouth, leaving teeth cleaner and whiter. Modern science backs this up. Today, many natural toothpastes include activated charcoal for the same reasons. But medieval people didn't need a lab to tell them it worked. They could feel the difference, and over time, charcoal became a staple in oral care across multiple cultures. Other ingredients included dried herbs like mint, rosemary, and sage. Again, not just for flavor, but for their health benefits. A 15th century recipe calls for dried mint, crushed sage, and salt, all ground together and mixed with water into a thick paste. In some places, honey was added, not for sweetness, but because raw honey contains hydrogen peroxide and other antibacterial compounds. It made the mixture more palatable and gave it a medicinal boost. Even ground eggshells, cuttlefish bone, and fine sand were used for their abrasive properties. These materials were just rough enough to polish teeth without damaging enamel. And it wasn't just peasants mixing these brews. Recipes from Arabic, Persian, and European medical texts describe sophisticated blends involving burnt bread, dried roses, oyster shells, and wine. Yes, wine. One recipe combined mint, honey, and red wine to create a paste that cleaned and disinfected at the same time. Medieval multitasking at its finest. Why not get your buzz while brushing? But even the best cleaning methods only work if your teeth are strong to begin with. That's where diet came in. Unlike modern people, medieval folk didn't consume large amounts of refined sugar. In fact, for most people, sugar was a rare luxury. Honey was the main sweetener, and even that was used sparingly. Without a constant supply of sugar feeding cavity-causing bacteria, their mouths weren't the acid factories ours are today. Combine that with a diet full of fibrous vegetables, coarse grains, and tough meat, and you've got meals that acted as natural toothbrushes. All that chewing didn't just clean teeth, it built stronger jaws. And this brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of medieval dental health: their jaws. Studies of medieval skulls show that people back then had wider, stronger jaws than we do today. That's not because they were genetically different, it's because they chewed more. Their diet required serious jaw effort, starting from childhood. This mechanical stress, chewing tough, fibrous food daily, stimulated jaw growth. As a result, they had enough room for all 32 teeth, including wisdom teeth. Impacted wisdom teeth, a common modern problem, were rare in the Middle Ages. For most people, those teeth emerged without issue. Their jaws had grown to fit them. That daily chewing workout did more than just make room for wisdom teeth. It influenced the overall health of medieval mouths. Studies examining thousands of historical skulls have found that impaction, crowding, and misalignment were significantly less common in medieval populations than in modern ones. Their jaws developed properly because their diets demanded it. Bread, made from stone-ground flour, often contained traces of grit. Meat was chewy and often tough. Fruits and vegetables weren't peeled, chopped, or softened. Everything they ate required effort. And that effort paid off, not just in stronger jaws, but in better spacing and alignment of teeth. There was no need for braces when your diet naturally shaped your mouth. But chewing wasn't the only thing shaping medieval dental health. What they ate, and more importantly, what they didn't, played a massive role in how their teeth fared. Sugar is the arch nemesis of dental health. Today, the average person consumes roughly 70 pounds of added sugar every year. But nearly the weight of a middle schooler. But in the Middle Ages, refined sugar was rare, imported, and prohibitively expensive. For the average peasant, sugar wasn't a daily ingredient. It was a myth. Honey was the primary sweetener, and even then, it was used sparingly, and more often for medicinal purposes than indulgent. Without sugar constantly bathing their teeth, medieval people weren't feeding the kinds of bacteria that cause cavities. Modern diets create an ideal environment for acid-producing microbes. These bacteria thrive on sugars and starches, producing acids that eat away at tooth enamel. But in a world with almost no refined sugar, those bacteria didn't stand much of a chance. That's why, when researchers examined medieval burial sites, they found far fewer cavities than expected. A study from Sweden revealed that only about 20% of teeth from medieval remains had any sign of decay, compared to over 90% of modern adults who've experienced at least one cavity. Meal frequency played a role too. Unlike today's constant snacking culture, medieval people typically ate 1 or 2 main meals a day. With no refrigerators or processed snacks, food wasn't always readily available. This reduced eating frequency meant teeth had more time between acid exposures to recover and remineralize. Saliva, our natural defense against cavities, had a chance to neutralize acids and repair enamel microdamage before the next meal. In contrast, today's constant grazing, sipping lattes, munching chips, sucking on candy, means our mouths rarely get a break. And let's talk about the types of food they ate. Coarse, fibrous vegetables like cabbage, onions, and turnips were staples. Grains were often whole and unrefined, requiring serious chewing. Even fruits were tougher and more fibrous than today's selectively bred, sugar-rich variety. Meat weren't pre-cut and tenderized. They were often dried or cooked over open fires, making them leathery and hard to chew. All of this promoted a cleaner mouth through natural mechanical cleaning. Every bite scrubbed the teeth like nature's toothbrush. Even bread played a unique role in dental wear. Medieval bread, especially for the poor, was made with flour ground between stone mills. That grinding process introduced tiny bits of grit into the flour. With every bite, people unknowingly ground their teeth against these microscopic particles. Over time, this led to significant tooth wear. Skulls from the period often show flattened chewing surfaces, evidence of this slow erosion. In some cases, the wear was so extreme that it exposed the inner pulp of the tooth, leading to pain and infection. But this wasn't due to poor hygiene. It was collateral damage from a harsh but functional diet. Of course, not all food damage came from grit. Hard nuts, unprocessed grains, and dried meat could crack teeth outright. And teeth weren't just used for eating. They were tools. People used them to hold thread, strip fibers, crack open nuts, or grip leather. Some women show distinct notches in their front teeth from holding sewing needles. Archers sometimes exhibit asymmetric wear from biting their bowstrings. Leather workers' teeth show chipping from biting tanned hides. In many trades, your mouth was part of your toolkit, and your teeth took the damage. Without professional dentists, damaged teeth often meant chronic pain. Abscesses, pockets of infection at the root of the tooth, were common. They show up in skulls as round lesions in the jawbone. About 8% of examined medieval skulls show evidence of these infections. The pain would have been constant, and without antibiotics or modern surgery, the risks were severe. An untreated dental abscess could spread to the bloodstream or brain, leading to sepsis or death. A simple cavity could become a fatal condition, and while extraction was sometimes an option, it was brutal. Teeth were pulled using whatever tools were available, pliers, tongs, or even bare fingers. The local barber often doubled as the town's tooth puller. There were no anesthetics, no antiseptics, and no sterile environments. It was raw, painful, and risky. If you were lucky, the tooth came out. If not, the root might break off and continue to cause problems for years. Still, people tried to treat their dental pain. Herbal remedies were widespread. Clove oil, still used today in some dental treatments, was applied for its numbing properties. Other treatments included chewed herbs like fennel or chamomile, warm compresses, or even poultices made of mashed garlic and vinegar. Some more aggressive methods included burning the tooth with hot metal, or bloodletting near the jaw to draw out the bad humors. These treatments didn't always work, and they often hurt as much as the condition itself. Interestingly, dental health varied across classes. Nobles, with access to rare sugars and refined foods, often had more cavities than peasants. But peasants had more broken and worn-down teeth from harder labor and harsher diets. Skulls of nobility show more signs of decay, while commoners show more mechanical damage. Neither group had perfect dental health, but they had different types of problems. By looking closely at all these factors, it becomes clear that medieval dental health wasn't universally bad. It was just different. While they didn't have fluoride toothpaste or routine cleanings, their lifestyle, especially their diet, offered natural protections we've lost today. Their food was harder, but cleaner. Their tools were primitive but purposeful. They lacked our modern comforts, but they had routines and remedies built from tradition and necessity. As we dig deeper into medieval dental health, one of the most surprising factors is something most people don't think about: water. The water medieval people drank was drastically different from what fills our taps today, not just in purity, but in its mineral composition. Without industrial filtration or chemical additives, their water came directly from wells, springs, rivers, and rain barrels. And while that sometimes led to contamination, especially in overcrowded towns, it also meant that, in many regions, people were drinking water naturally rich in minerals like calcium, phosphorus, and even fluoride. These minerals play a vital role in strengthening tooth enamel. Modern dentists often prescribe fluoride toothpaste and treatments because fluoride helps remineralize weakened enamel and protect against decay. But in some medieval communities, people were unknowingly receiving this benefit directly from their natural water sources. Studies of skeletal remains from areas with mineral-rich spring water show lower rates of dental decay compared to those from regions without those benefits. In a way, nature was doing the job of a modern dentist. No fluoride treatments needed, just a bucket and a well. Rainwater, collected in stone cisterns or wooden barrels, also had advantages. It was naturally pH neutral and free from the acids that can erode enamel. While rainwater didn't offer the mineral boost of spring water, it was clean and gentle on the teeth, especially in rural areas where pollution was minimal. Drinking room temperature water also had an unexpected benefit: less enamel stress. Unlike today's ice-cold sodas or scalding coffee, medieval people mostly drank water at ambient temperature, avoiding the tiny cracks and enamel sensitivity triggered by extreme temperature. Even beverages like ale and wine, common in medieval diets, had less impact on dental health than modern sugary drinks. Medieval ale wasn't the sweet, syrupy beer we know today. It was more like a fermented grain soup, mildly alcoholic and low in sugar. Wine, while acidic, was rarely sweetened with sugar the way it is now. And for the average person, drinking water still made up the bulk of daily hydration. Without energy drinks, soda, or processed fruit juice, the sugar and acid load on their teeth remained low. But not all water was beneficial. In urban areas, water sources could become polluted quickly, especially as cities expanded. Waste disposal systems were rudimentary at best, and rivers running through medieval towns often doubled as sewers. In such cases, people often relied more on ale or wine, which, due to the fermentation process, was generally safer to drink than contaminated river water. This substitution may have protected them from waterborne illness, but it also meant less access to mineral-rich hydration. Still, even poor city dwellers often had access to communal wells or spring-fed fountains, giving them a cleaner source of drinking water than might be assumed. The connection between water and dental health was largely invisible to the people of the time. They didn't understand the molecular chemistry behind calcium ions or the benefits of fluoride. But their reliance on natural, untreated water invitatively supported their oral health in a way that modern people with our chlorinated, processed, and sugar-accompanied beverages have largely lost. Sometimes the lack of technology worked in their favor. When all of this is considered: natural toothbrushes, diet, water quality, and a life of functional jaw use, the myth of universally horrible medieval teeth starts to crumble. Sure, they didn't have gleaming Hollywood smiles. Their teeth weren't bleached white or perfectly straight. But neither were they universally rotted out or falling from their mouths. In fact, many medieval people lived into their 50s or 60s with most of their teeth intact, albeit worn. Their dental problems, when they occurred, were the result of environmental factors and lack of surgical intervention, not daily neglect. Their challenges were real. They didn't have root canals, braces, or fillings. If a tooth went bad, it was pulled painfully. But the conditions that led to such outcomes were not as common as you might think. Modern research has repeatedly shown that cavity rates were significantly lower in pre-industrial populations, including medieval ones. It wasn't until the widespread availability of sugar in the 17th and 18th centuries that dental decay began to skyrocket across Europe. Even the social meaning of teeth was different. There wasn't an obsession with perfectly aligned or blindingly white teeth. Dental health was primarily about function. Could you eat, chew, and speak without pain? A smile filled with slightly crooked, yellowed but healthy teeth wasn't unusual or shameful. It was normal. It was human. Their standard of beauty was different, and so were their expectations. Today, we spend billions on dental care, from orthodontics to whitening strips, electric toothbrushes to fluoride rinses. And yet, the rate of dental decay remains high, especially in countries with heavy sugar consumption. Our modern conveniences, while powerful, haven't completely protected us from oral health problems. If anything, they've lulled us into believing that brushing twice a day can undo all the damage of processed foods, constant snacking, and sugary drinks. But medieval people didn't need a dental revolution to have relatively healthy teeth. They needed the right habits, natural tools, and diets that supported, rather than sabotaged, their oral health. Perhaps that's the real lesson. Medieval people didn't have dental hygiene as a product. They had it as a practice. Their oral care wasn't something they bought. It was something they did, integrated into their lives through necessity and tradition. And in some ways, that ancient wisdom, chew more, eat less sugar, rinse with water, use what nature provides, is more relevant today than ever. So, the next time you picture a medieval peasant with a mouthful of blackened stumps, consider the evidence: the twigs, the herbs, the diet, the water. Their teeth may not have been glamorous, but they were stronger, cleaner, and more resilient than we give them credit for. In the niche of medieval life, dental care wasn't primitive. It was just different. And in some ways, maybe even better.